Hello, everyone. This is DJ Sully D, and this is my Rise of Skywalker spoiler review. I just want to start out by letting you know that I really liked the Rise of Skywalker, and I actually saw it in a theater that I think pretty much everyone liked it. There was pretty heavy applause at the end of the movie, and the theater was actually pretty much packed. Now, there are some negatives that I want to really start with. The first one is the use of the Emperor. And the Emperor, I think, is going to be the biggest weakness in this movie and the storyline surrounding him, especially the idea of how he survived. We are never told. They basically just get to the point. He's alive, he's decrepit, he's old, he's basically on life support, and that's pretty much it. And I think that's going to be a big weakness for most Star Wars fans. And it's something I think J.J. Abrams should have addressed directly. It would really have helped out some of the weaknesses in the story. When we look at how the rest of the story with the Emperor is going to take place, I really don't have much of a problem with it. It works out pretty well. I think it makes sense what is going on. He has basically gotten too old, too decrepit, and he needs to basically transfer his essence to someone else. And that someone else is going to be his granddaughter, Rey. Now, this is the huge reveal in the movie, and I, for one, think it's something that could have been averted. I don't think they actually needed to reveal that Rey was his granddaughter. Something that the entire storyline basically could have been kept the same, just keeping Rey the nobody that we were told she was in The Last Jedi. Now, one of the other things that sort of comes to mind when I think of things I didn't like is going to be new force powers. I don't really like it when Star Wars plays around with our galaxy and changes things up. Things like Luke Skywalker astro projecting across half the galaxy, jumping ships into planets or through planetary shields while they're in hyperspace, tracking ships in hyperspace. All those are things that I think goes against the idea that we've gotten so far in Star Wars. Basically, we do have force Skyping, and now during force Skyping, you can take items away from the other person or give items back and forth. Kylo Ren is going to take a necklace from Rey early on, and then later in the movie, she's going to give him a lightsaber back. You also have a scene that is going to have Rey have the power to heal. I don't really have a problem with this power, basically because there is some expanded universe canon for that. Probably the scene I have the biggest actual problem with is there's a flashback of Luke and Leia basically sparring, showing that Leia had trained as a Jedi, and she was a pretty good Jedi, and she actually gets the best of Luke, which I don't really have a problem with for the moment, but they're actually sparring in helmets with their visors down. When they put the visor up, you're going to see their younger faces, which of course are digitally done. This is one of the only CGI issues I had, or effects issue I had with the movie, and that was that Luke's face looked more like his face for A New Hope than for Return of the Jedi, and that sparring would have had to have been done after Return of the Jedi. Also, Leia's face, now that I think of it, probably had the same issue. They look like it was more from A New Hope than post Return of the Jedi. There was one other shot. It wasn't really a scene. It was just a shot where the Resistance fleet shows up. Basically, Lando goes and gets recruits ships to come and help, and it's going to be a large number of ships. They're going to take up the whole screen. You see the shot. I even think they added more ships after the shot that's shown in the trailer. And it's just overwhelming. I think the shot would have been much better if they would have basically cut it down to maybe 2/3 of the number of ships or half the number of ships. I think everyone would have gotten the same idea that, hey, there's this massive fleet of individual ships here to help. Looking at the positives, the first thing is got to be the acting. I thought the acting was much, much, much better than it has been in the previous movies from our big four. Of course, by that, John Boyega, Daisy Ridley, Oscar Isaac, and Adam Driver. They actually seem like they care about this movie a little bit more than they have in the past. I think John Boyega's character had a lot more to do, did a great job. I thought the banter between Poe and Rey was very good, establishing a relationship. You had this sort of tension between all three of them. Then you add in Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, I thought did a better job. I'm in general not a huge fan of Adam Driver's acting. He is one of these actors that I always feel is very robotic, sort of like Daisy Ridley. The issue I have between the two of them basically is in this movie, I thought the Kylo Ren character, Adam Driver, was still sort of robotic, whereas Daisy Ridley as Rey sort of had loosened up a little bit. She was much smoother. She was sort of got her emotions to us a little bit better. Not that sort of robotic type acting that we saw from Hayden Christensen early in the prequel series. Along with that, we also see, the cinematography, the filming, the sound are all absolutely outstanding. I loved how they filmed and looked at the planets. I love John Williams' score. It is second to none. He is a brilliant man. Really, to me, it stood out as best soundtrack that he has done so far, other than the original series. The action was almost nonstop. Basically, after the opening crawl, you're going to see action from beginning to end. For those people who did not see enough battles, who did not see enough lightsaber fights and Jedi and Sith, you're going to be quite happy with this movie. I really thought the CGI and effects were extremely good, especially with the new creatures. None of the creatures took me out of the movie. Sometimes that happens. In The Force Awakens, Uncharted Plot especially took me out of the movie for a little while. It just wasn't a believable character for me, and I didn't really see that in any way in The Rise of Skywalker. The only CGI effects problem I had basically was that scene with the fleet when it came in to save the day. Basically, new characters played a big role. You're going to see several people come in as new characters. Of course, Richard Grant is going to play General Pride. He comes in as the new head of the First Order fleet. He's going to be commanding that fleet. So basically, General Hux has basically been demoted almost. And we're going to find out also that General Hux is a spy for the Resistance. He's basically just sending info to the Resistance because he hates Kylo Ren. That, by the way, is about the only thing that had been spoiled for me in the movie. I had been very careful not to watch any kind of spoiler videos or anything like that so that I wouldn't be spoiled, but this is the only thing that I knew going in. And I will tell you, there is an instance in the movie. General Hux has just helped our heroes escape, and he comes in, they shoot him in the leg so the commanders won't be suspicious, and they come in and General Pride shoots him and says, I guess we know who the spy is now. And I'll tell you, I almost stood up and applauded in the movie theater. I was so happy. Could not stand General Hux as far as I could throw him. I really thought that was a great scene. Great scene. We also have Kerry Russell as Zori Bliss. I really enjoyed her back and forth with Poe Dameron. I thought it was something that really worked. I wish we would have actually seen some more of her in back and forth with him. Also, we're going to see Naomi Ackie. And I'm not real sure what her character's name was. She's going to work some with Finn at the end, and there's going to be a little bit of a relationship there. And then at the very end, she's going to basically come in and introduce herself to Lando. There was a lot of speculation that Naomi Ackie character was going to be Lando's daughter. There's no indication that that was part of anything. The actual character of Lando, I thought they used him very well. I was a little concerned. I saw him on the red carpet and he looked a little feeble. I was wondering what they would be able to do with him, but I thought his character was classic and I loved it. I think you'll be very happy with what Lando did in the movie. The biggest surprise of the movie is, of course, that Harrison Ford returns as Han Solo, and that's going to be in a scene with Kylo Ren. Basically, Kylo Ren is having a very bad day, and he's going to basically be talking to his father, who really isn't there, but he is there. And so We get to see Harrison Ford return. There was a gasp in the theater when that happened, when people saw him. Another gasp was, of course, when Rey was identified as Palpatine's granddaughter. Looking at the rest of the cast, just to let people know, it's not a surprise now because he is listed on the cast list, but Dennis Lawson does reprise his role as Wedge Antilles. Which I enjoyed. I wish it would have been longer. Actually, if you blinked at the wrong time, you would have probably missed him. Just to let you know, if you're watching and want to catch Wedge, he's the gunner for the Falcons. So when Lando shows up with the fleet, pay attention until you see him. Don't look away or you'll miss it. Then near the end, when Rey is fighting Palpatine and everything is happening, you are going to have a bunch of cameos that are listed. I'm not going to go over them all, but basically from the Clone Wars and Rebels series, there are going to be some voiceovers. We don't see any characters. I know there was talk of Ahsoka Tano being in the movie, and we do hear her voice, but she is not in the movie in any other way. So don't be expecting her. Just to talk a little bit about the ending before we get out of here. The ending is, I think, satisfactory. I think it is something that is going to probably divide a lot of people. Don't think, for me, it wasn't a problem. I enjoyed it, and the resolution with Palpatine and what happened there. I will warn you, there is a dramatic moment where Rey does kiss Kylo. I'm not real sure how I feel about that, really. It was something that I didn't think I wanted to see, but I sort of sat in the theater thinking, when the music was playing and they were leading up to it, I kept thinking, I think I want them to kiss. And of course they did. And so you're going to get to see that. And then the actual ending, you do get to see a couple of Ewoks. It's just in basically passing, sort of like the end of Return of the Jedi. There's lots of celebrations. They go around and basically see different planets with Star Destroyers crashing in those planets. Basically, the ending, we're going to end on Tatooine. I'm not going to really go in very heavily on what happened there. It's going to be, like I said, very controversial. People are going to have very strong feelings about it, but basically, it ends with a person in the middle of the Tatooine desert at the Skywalker homestead where Luke grew up. Rey is going to go there. She's going to be asked what her name is, and she's going to say Rey Skywalker. So that's where the Rise of Skywalker comes from. But sadly, of course, we're probably not going to see anything else in this timeline, probably for at least 10 years. Maybe more. Now, one other thing with the positives is the humor in the movie. I thought the humor was spot on for Star Wars. The humor in The Last Jedi was not good. It was too slapstick. It was silly. The whole thing with Poe and Hux at the start, the mama jokes, definitely was not Star Wars. I thought every spot of humor in The Rise of Skywalker was Star Wars humor for the most part. With the droids, the banter between the characters, I thought was very good. Of course, they killed Hux, so he wasn't that type of entertainment anymore. Just going back, the whole thing with C-3PO was much ado about nothing because eventually, of course, R2 is able to reboot his memory. And one thing I'll just sort of throw in here as well is there was a lot of concern about this scene with the horses on the Star Destroyer. And I will say I was very concerned about that, but when you actually see it in the movie, when it's in context, it really isn't that big of a problem. It makes sense for the most part. It's not something that took me out of the movie. This has been our review of Rise of Skywalker. Give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and comment below. Thanks for coming.